welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Welcome to the book club series, part of this channel where we read a book by a Black author every single month and review those pages every single week. And by the end of the month, we review that book in its entirety, okay? Welcome to the last day of February, Black History Month. Although it doesn't stop there, Black history is throughout all times, okay? So hopefully you guys will get this video by the 28th, because it is the 28th. If not, the latest March 1st, okay? Fingers crossed, all right? So I do want to issue an apology, my monthly apology, oh my god. If you're not interested in that and you just want to get straight to the final review of this book, I'll put a timestamp down below in the description bar so you can get straight to that, okay? So with that being said, y'all, I just want to apologize for just not being consistent. One thing I want to say is that you don't know what you have until it's taken away from you. So although I've struggled with mental health in the past and it's been a very rough, I could say past 2 years for me, I didn't realize how much more I could have pushed through that to show up, because I could have, you know, looking back. But now I've recently been diagnosed with a disease that physically affects me. I make plans for this channel and I say I want to show up to this, I will show up to that. I literally make schedules and plans of like how I want everything to go. And of course nothing goes according to plan, and I fail to show up. However, my intentions is to show up. I don't just say these things to not show up. I have every intention to. I feel like I allow life's events to get in the way of that. And I'm really learning to really try to push through that and show up anyways, because we all have a story, right? We all have stuff going on, but people show up every day for the things that they need to show up for, right? So that being said, I say I have regrets in the past of not showing up as much as I knew I could, because now not only mentally am I struggling a bit, I've improved in that area, but I'm still struggling. Physically, I'm literally dictated by my body what I would do in that day, you know, and that could be quite frustrating for someone who wants to achieve a lot and wants to do a lot, and who's extremely independent and just likes to be very active. And so I try to take advantage of the few moments that I have when my body's okay. And when it's not, it's literally like there's literally nothing I could do. So with all that being said, just know like I'm really trying my best, and regardless of other limitation that I now have, I just ask you guys to bear with me, and those who have bared with me that are not new, I truly like appreciate you. I hope you win the lotto. I hope you get everything in life that you ever dreamed of. I just appreciate you. I appreciate you coming along this journey with me. This book club really means a lot to me. So I'm just happy that when I upload a video that 1 or 2 people still watch me. Ooh, sorry. I don't got the Rona. The Rona and Omarion did not get me. Not this time. Thank God. That being said, y'all, thank you for just, you know, like just sticking out with your girl, and we gonna get into this, okay? Obviously here to review this book, this month's book of the month, which is Awake by Rebecca Hall, The Hidden History of Women Slave Revolts. This is such a wonderful read. I know the last video I said to read chapters 1 through 5. I did read those chapters in the beginning of the month, and I just recently wrapped everything up and went ahead to finish it. There was 10 chapters in total. It's a very easy read. If you're like an active reader, you probably finish this within a day, especially with the way it's curated with the illustrations. It just makes it easier for any reader to really go through this quickly. If you're a reader like myself and you're still new to the game, this is probably like the perfect book for a reader like us, like who's more so like a visual learner rather than like just reading like pages upon pages of like words. Especially if you have like a short attention span, and that's my problem. I have an extremely short attention span, and on top of that, like I'm more like visual. Like anything that requires too many like words, it's just, or like lectures, it's like, oh, like, you know. So this book is so beautifully illustrated. The best way I can describe this book is like an upscale like Black history comic book. That's the best way I could describe the experience of reading this book, which has been so phenomenal. Like I learned so much information that I don't think I would have been able to absorb if it was brought to me in any other way, which is kind of sad. It shows you my background in school. I know we live in a time now where like we have access to so much information, but there's so much misinformation out there, right? And I remember hearing younger, like, you know, if you really want to know the truth about anything, read a book. And this is a perfect example of that, okay? I've learned so much of the woman-led slave revolts in such a detailed, honest, yet painful way. On the other hand, it's really liberating because as a Black woman, you identify with the strengths. And it's also healing as well, you know, I feel, because we still carry the DNA of our ancestors. So reading these things is honoring them because their stories are being heard, they're not forgotten. It's a reminder of where you come from. It's a reminder and also like a guide, like a map, like being guided through even future challenges that we may encounter, you know? So I am forever grateful for Rebecca Hall's work. She's just amazing. Let's get into it. I did write a few notes down because I tend to ramble and like say a whole bunch of nothing or just be like extremely repetitive. So hopefully I'll just get better at that with time and use this process to help me navigate that, okay? So as you can see, I just wrote like, you know, like a little notebook. I just wrote a couple notes. So basically, Rebecca starts out the book letting you know she grew up in New York. She went to law school at Berkeley. She was a tenants' right attorney for 8 years. She has a son and a partner. And by partner, I believe she's gay. Shout out to the LGBT community. And if not, and I'm mistaken that, I'm just going to according to the illustrations, then I apologize. And she's also a professor at a university in Santa Cruz in California. So just excuse me if I forget the name. I'm actually looking to go to California and see if I can attend one of her classes because the information and the way she explains things, it's so easy for my mind to absorb, and I feel like there's just so much I can learn from her, you know? And it also reminds me of like my little sister. She's like my little like activist. She inspires me so much with even the research that she's done, and reading this book, it just reminds me of like my sister and her style and how she approaches things. So it's just really, really beautiful. And so she goes straight into the two slaves that eventually got burnt alive because they ended up burning the house of like a family of 5 and their mistress. And I learned a lot in this book of how involved England in slavery. We hear about this a lot, right? Especially recently with like Meghan Sparkle and her husband, and like, you know, having a Black person to enter that palace. It's one thing when you hear things about your history, but it's another thing when you're walking the journey of an author who actually did research. Like you can see the research that she's done from just going to different libraries or going to London and going to like different constitutions that hold the records of slavery before the 1900s, when there were so many active slave revolts. Although there were slave revolts throughout history, but I think it was during the time where it was during the Atlantic slave trade that you just don't hear about it, or we were never taught about it. So it was just interesting just seeing her navigate that, and then also actively in her real time deal with like the racism that is present today, you know, during her encounters of going to these places and having the security guards, you know, look at her and question her differently, even though she is this well-educated, renowned attorney and professor, you know. So it's a very interesting dynamic to witness, because clearly anybody of color, specifically as Black folks, can identify with that, you know. So to go further along in the book, the chapters that stood out to me the most was chapter 6, 7, and 8. Y'all, this was heavy. Coming across certain truths that literally, if it wasn't for me reading this book, I would have no idea. If it wasn't for constant persistence of wanting to know our history and overcoming extreme challenges that are deeply, and traumas that are deeply rooted in our DNA, it's just, one, it's exhausting. And two, it's just like, wow. We must be so powerful that these people will go to such extents to keep us down. And it's mind-blowing. It's although like every day we're reminded of the traumas of our history, it's just never something that gets easier with time. I feel like it's just something we get accustomed to, but it's just because you're accustomed to something doesn't mean that it doesn't affect you in a very negative way. It doesn't mean that you still don't struggle with it every day. I wrote a couple notes because I'm going on a rant again. So in chapter 6, I like the title because it says, like, they cut my voice off, so I now have 2 voices. I love that because the system attempt to silence us, but in a way where they hinder information of us in our part, in our roles that we play in history. But yet it's our resilience and our curiosity to know and to tell the stories of our ancestors. Because not only are you giving me fuel to speak my voice, in the same breath I'm speaking the voices of my ancestors. So that's another voice. You know what I mean? And many more. So it's like, no matter how much you try to suppress our history, no matter how much you try to hinder it, it's the truth. You can't pin down the truth for too long. It's gonna come out regardless. And then the more you pin it down, the more you give exposure to it. So let's get into the chapter. When she's a professor, she gives an assignment for her students to read the book Beloved by Toni Morrison, which is one of the most renowned historical figure in our history. I actually had plans this month to read, a book from her, because there's a video on my Instagram page of Oprah when she describes a story in one of her books. I don't know if I can find it. I'll insert it here.
What is your definition of freedom as it pertains to your own life? My favorite definition of freedom comes from the book Beloved, where Toni Morrison is describing the former slave Setha after she's been freed. And she talks about 28 days of freedom. 28 days of freedom she had. And on the 29th, it was over. And in those 28 days of freedom, she had the ability to wake up in the morning and decide for myself what to do with the day. To wake up in the morning, decide for myself what to do with the day. Not encumbered by anybody else's definition of what it means to be me or what I should be doing. To wake up in the morning and decide for myself what to do with the day.
And I believe that is true freedom, not having anybody tell you what to do, living life according to you and what you want to do with the day. That is true freedom, And I believe we live in a society now that we're slowly trying to get out of it with being, self-employed. But there's still some sort of hold on us where we have to answer to someone. When in this case, the former slave in the book did not have to answer to anyone for that particular time where she escaped and she felt a taste of freedom. I thought that was really interesting when she had mentioned that book in her experience of her teaching her class, because I'm like, oh, that's the book I was gonna read. So she also explains this part of the book where she has this dialogue with the student where one of the students named Vicky said that she doesn't feel comfortable reading this book again because it was, it was clearly traumatizing for her. And she had mentioned a line that even made me want to read this book even more because I haven't read the book yet. And she says, I can't believe like her killer child, she could have chosen another way. Why did she choose that? So that made me realize like, oh, okay, like I need to read this book and wonder why, because I'm hearing on one end, Oprah saying this to escape slavery, but then I'm reading in this book another part of it that seems so daunting to the point where a student who is of color who could not reread the book because it was that traumatizing. And what I love about Rebecca Hall is that even little things like telling the student in that moment, like, you don't have to call me Dr. Hall, call me Rebecca, making her feel comfortable, making it, a safe space. I feel like she's just constantly conscious of creating safe spaces for us people of African descent to feel safe in, given that the world works very, very hard to do the opposite. So in that moment when she told her student that, that's okay, you don't have to read it as long as you can discuss it in class, because if you already read it, then that's fine. And I just thought that exchange was just very beautiful and understanding, and just creating that safe space was just so profound. And in that moment, I realized like, yeah, I want to take her class. Like, I need to go on the next plane to Cali and take that woman's class. You heard me? I just thought that moment was beautiful. And she has just many moments like that are pretty like profound, insightful, and you can tell she's very intentional with everything that she says and does, and she's very thorough. And it's just amazing coming across just people like her, especially when you're in an environment where necessarily are sensitive to our traumas, and we're just told to just suck it up and like move on, when that's like impossible. The same chapter, I want to show you guys like some of the illustrations. For those who didn't read and for those who read, you already know how true this like chapter is. Learned a lot about the Atlantic slave trade that I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know really much about. It's like, the basics and what you come across on like social media and like what people tell you, but like just to see this professor like just fly to London and in search of like just being extremely persistent in what happened to the slaves. I'm missing a lot of details, and for those who read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and for those who don't, I just want to encourage you to really get this book and read it, because it's extremely informative and you're going to learn so much more about our history. Guys, this is not a big book. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a huge book. So the fact that I was able to absorb so much information in here, and there's still it just makes me realize how so much more that I don't know. And as much as we want to protect our mental health and not like try to get into the details of everything, I just think in order to get through history, you have to face it. And you have to face its truths, no matter how ugly, no matter how that looks. This literally is just making me more curious as to, well, I need to know more then, like I need to know more of what's being kept from us. I need to know, why did she went to the Victoria Tower House of the Parliament in London, which holds a lot of the slave trades records in the like 1700s, because it's for some reason a lot of that is buried or just not, a lot of people of color don't have access to that information. You're usually denied. So, and that's what it shows here. The guard, when she had arrived, gave her a really hard time, held her passport, and told her she needed to be escorted throughout her journey of trying to find the archives of what happened at that time. And which I think is just, it's like a result. It's just like history is just repeating itself. Like nothing is resolved, you know what I mean? It's like as she's on this journey of trying to dig deeper in our history, she's also experiencing the aftermath of it all. I encourage anyone who reads this book to really, like, when you get to chapters 6 through 8, really pay attention, because those chapters really describe women-led slave revolts. And I came across even just information that how like the ships that revolted the most always had more women on it. And in history, we're often, taught, and it's a men's world, men go to war, but it's really the successful slave revolts. Across her research, were the ones that were led by women. And for that reason, there's many reasons for that, but the few reasons that was mentioned is that in the ship, the men were in the bottom dock chained, and the women were left on the upper dock where they were closer to the weapons, but they weren't guarded. And reason being is that the slave masters or the captains, they didn't believe women were strong enough to fight, so yet they weren't intimidated, right? So little did they know, women are badasses, and the most successful revolts were the ones that the women were involved in. Even the few revolts where the men retaliated, they were too impulsive and they weren't as patient and well thought out with their strategy. However, I like how it wasn't like a men versus women in our community, which we tend to do. It was thoroughly expressed how, you know, they both needed each other for this to be successful as well. You know, it just so happened that the slave revolts that were more successful were the ships that had more women. And some things that were really disturbing were the recordings of certain captains at the time, like almost glorifying and making it seem like it was a pleasure that these women were on the ships, knowing how like they were abused and raped, and it was just really sick. And the visuals show like Rebecca like emotional journey throughout her research and come across this information. I just think she's very brave to just go through with this research, and she had moments of vulnerability, like saying like she hated that she had to turn her heart off just so she can consume this information without necessarily being destroyed by it. I just like how this book is just such a vulnerable way to discover a lot of things that happened in our past and what our ancestors had to endure. And it was also beautiful in a way where we see the resilience and the strength of our people. I know I didn't discuss so much, but I really want, you know, the readers that didn't read and you're just coming across my video for like a final review of this book, I really suggest you to go out to buy it. Sorry for the abrupt change. When I looked at my phone and I thought I was done recording, my storage was full and I had to delete some apps to make some room to finish out this video. So that being said, y'all, please go out and get this book. It's worth it. 10 out of 10, top 3 in my book. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let's start some dialogue. In my next video, a series of Black-owned bookstores in Atlanta. I already have part 1 up in my TikTok, so go check that out. And my next video, right after this, I'm doing a journey to Black-owned. I'm hoping that it comes out, you know, on the 28th, on the night that I'm recording this. If not, on the 1st, that's okay. We're on this journey together. I started this journey a long time ago, but I wanted to finally start it in a way where it's on film and I get to share it with you guys, okay? What I'm wearing is, my earrings are Black-owned. It says Black Power. Okay, I got it from a Black-owned boutique in Atlanta. This shirt, it says, I don't know if you guys can see it. It says, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud." Okay, check it out, period. That's from Sonia Boutique. She's bomb, illest boutique store in LA. She's also on the gram. I'll tag all the information down below. And in the back, I don't know if you peeped my candle, but it's from favorite girl, Jackie. Forever Mood is her candle brand. I love Jackie. So with all of that, y'all, the next haul I'm gonna have coming up in my next video, it's exciting. I got a couple of things from different Black-owned brands, so please stay tuned for that. Next week, we're gonna start our book of the month of March, so also check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all in the next video, okay? Peace.